Perhaps not. 3 major scientific discoveries contradict the expectations of scientific atheists and point instead in a distinctly God-friendly direction.
Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at a PragerU video, pointing out through Stephen Meyer, your resident vampire. I think he's a vampire. He looks like a If you've ever seen somebody walk down the street and you're like, yeah, that guy's probably a vampire, it's definitely Stephen Meyer. If you want to fuck around and find out how a Christian vampire is going to tell us the problems with atheism, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Stephen Meyer is a regular speaker for PragerU. Also, he is been hypothesized by me to be a vampire. I do believe he's 300 years old. We could probably find evidence of him all the way back to medieval times, probably. You won't be able to get this out of your head, like, after you watch and see Stephen Meyer, because he definitely looks like a Count Dracula fuck from the 1500s, okay? Just watch. Stephen Meyer has 3 problems with atheism. 3 things that apparently atheism gets wrong or is a problem for atheism. Of course, this is about pitting science against God. So we're going to see where he's going to go with this.
In a recent interview, while I was presenting some scientific discoveries that may point to the existence of God, a camera operator, a young woman whom I'll call Maria, began to weep visibly. Later, she told me the reason for her tears. Like many young people, Maria believed in God when she arrived in college. But while there, she repeatedly encountered professors who insisted that based on the science, God was a myth.
Okay, I already have a problem. I mean, I went to college for, let's see, I started college immediately after high school. So it was 2003 to 2012. That's what, 12 years? No, 7 and 2, 9 years. I spent 9, can't do math tonight. I spent 9 years in college, never had a single teacher whatsoever lay out an argument that God is a myth. Of course, I didn't take like any comparative religion classes. I didn't take any philosophy classes or anything like that. Like, I didn't take those kinds of classes. But my point is that I never had this experience, and it turns out I do have, if you're looking for more information on this and how I'm not just pulling it out of my ass, check in the description. I've got a number of links. One of them is about how kids are not losing, like college kids are not losing their faith due to teachers or due to college whatsoever. So it seems like my experience is pretty much the norm of not being quote unquote attacked by college teachers and professors about faith. Like, it doesn't come up. So there's actually a study that I have in the description where they took a survey of students entering college. And they noticed that students entering college were more likely to, as time went on, were more likely not to subscribe to any one particular religious affiliation. It seems like college didn't really have a significant effect on whether or not they became more religious or sustained their religiosity or anything like that. So it doesn't seem like college is the problem. Like, as far as colleges directly pushing an atheistic type of mindset on people or an atheistic view on people. So it's kind of interesting that he would paint it like this. Also, I call bullshit on this ever happening. I do not think that this ever happened to Stephen Meyer. I think that this is a sort of like a parable or just a story that he's telling. It could have happened. I'm perfectly open to the possibility that it could have happened. But considering how this would be a very rare occasion, using this to paint it as the generalized experience that you get in college, like I feel like he's trying to do, is it's a bit misleading in my opinion.
No more real than Santa Claus. Maria didn't feel equipped to challenge her professors. She eventually left college with nagging doubts about her faith and wondered whether life, including her own life, might be nothing more than a cosmic accident.
Well, I feel like this is something that everybody goes through, especially if you've left your faith, trying to compensate for being told your entire life that there's ultimate meaning to your life, and that's to praise God. And then if you deconstruct and you fall out of your faith, it can be a very jarring experience on occasion. It can leave you wondering, like, what's your place in this world? So I feel like this is a very normal reaction to losing something like that, or to leaving faith. You know, I feel like this is a very normal experience. Some people come out on the side where, you know, their faith is even deeper. You know, it's been emboldened by whatever kind of deep thinking they did about what they believed and why they believed it. Some people become nihilists. That's not all atheists, obviously, but there are some people that become nihilists. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have this very clinically depressed attitude type of mindset. I feel like he's portraying his character here, because I don't think that this person actually existed, but I think he's portraying this character here as entering into this very this time in their life where they're trying to figure out where they fit at in the world. I think that being in that kind of vulnerable spot, people like apologists will see that as an opportunity to like pull them into their own deluded mess.
Many young people share Maria's doubts. Indeed, powerful voices in the academy tell us that science makes belief in God and human significance untenable. Or as Richard Dawkins, the famed atheist from Oxford, has asserted, the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference.
You know, for some reason, apologists love to pull this out like it's some kind of negative thing against atheism. The only negative thing about this particular quote is the fact that Richard Dawkins said it. I really wish that people would stop pulling Dawkins out. It's so frustrating to me that they always resort to using Dawkins or something that Dawkins. I really don't care what Dawkins said. In the correct context for this quote right here, he's talking about how nature doesn't give a shit about your feelings. Nature doesn't have some kind of moral agency to where it cares about whether or not you're suffering or any particular organism suffering. But they want to paint it as this like bottomless feeling of just meaninglessness. And the purpose that he's talking about is like ultimate purpose, like an transcendental purpose. Because like for Christians, the transcendental purpose to life is to praise God. And that's it. I don't think that nature has any of those properties of a transcendental purpose other than to survive. That works both for my commentary and the video, by the way. Okay, so this is from Dawkins' 1995 book, That the World That Science Discovers. Yeah, see, so the correct the correct context, as this person has put it in right here, is that the world that science discovers has no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. And the fuller quote here is, in a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason to it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. So it's very obvious that Meyer is pulling this out of context. He's trying to make Dawkins's word apply to, I guess, our, like a very human view of life. Like Dawkins thinks that there's no purpose to life whatsoever and all this, but that's not the context in which Dawkins is talking in. So it just seems to me like this is a very disingenuous quote mining situation that Meyer finds himself in.
But are we the product of such indifference, that is purely materialistic processes that did not have us in mind, as another scientific atheist has put it?
Well, yeah, I really don't think that the universe or nature in general had us specifically in mind. How full of yourself do you have to be to think that this entire universe was made specifically for you or for our species? I mean, most of the planet we can't live on. We've been able to adapt and figure out ways to live on a good portion of the planet. But like, as far as just naturally a human butt naked out in the wilderness, you think that we can live in very many places? No, we can't. I feel like a tardigrade is more adept at surviving in the most unlikely situations and in surviving anywhere. Yes, exactly there, honey. Australia wants to kill you. Everything in Australia wants to kill you. Even the cute little dogs want to slice your throat. They're just too small. You have to understand that it makes you come off sounding rather full of yourself to say that, oh, you mean this universe didn't have us in mind when it created itself, or God created it? What are you talking about? That has to be like the entire story right there, that this entire universe was modeled for us, even though 99.9999% of it is definitely inhospitable to life. We're the only known portion of the universe that supports life. There's probably life out there. We just haven't discovered it yet. It was all about you, hun. This entire world's designed for you. Okay, makes sense. I've come to realize that a lot of apologists out there are so entrenched into their own bias, that they're so entrenched into their own dogmatic beliefs that it literally makes no sense to consider another position. Like to them, it's totally meaningless to think, oh, well, what if God didn't exist? Well, that's just preposterous to think that. And so I feel like for them to think about God not existing, a lot of stuff just doesn't make sense to them, and it blinds them with their own faith. I feel like this is just another aspect of that.
Does the universe have the properties we should expect if this all there is matter vision of reality is correct?
Well, yes, mainly because of how we see nature. I don't know if y'all have been on Reddit or y'all go on Reddit, but there's a sub that if you can stomach it, it can be kind of awesome. It's called it's a subreddit called Nature is Metal. You look at that subreddit, and the idea that God made this planet for us immediately goes out the window, or that this universe was made specifically for us, or that in nature there's any kind of concept of good, bad, or evil. I mean, I was scrolling through there the other night, and I saw a leopard kill this monkey, and then the monkey had a small baby, to which the leopard then took care of the baby afterwards, just because it confuses its own maternal instinct with, the fact that it just killed the baby's mother. That entire situation right there is really fucked up. It sounds like it might be a Disney movie, but as soon as that baby monkey is like not twerking that leopard's maternal instinct, it's getting eaten just like the mother did. And that's what Dawkins was talking about, and that's what it means when we say that the universe doesn't give a shit about your feelings. This universe wasn't made for you. This universe doesn't conform to what you want. And apparently 300-year-old vampire Stephen Meyer here can't grasp a world that doesn't care about him. That's not to say that people don't care about Stephen Meyer. I even think 300 years ago, they probably cared about him.
Perhaps not. 3 major scientific discoveries contradict the expectations of scientific atheists and point instead in a distinctly God-friendly direction. First, the Big Bang.
Oh, shit. The Big Bang. So here's the problem. So he's basically going to be covering the cosmological argument. I have watched the video, so I know that's where he's going. But even from right here, anytime anybody says the Big Bang is a problem for atheism, you know they're going to go the cosmological argument route. There's various ways that they can go about it, various things they can bring up. But in any case, the Big Bang being a natural event works perfectly fine in naturalism. Like in that particular framework, it works perfectly fine. The thing is that they always make this logical leap from the Big Bang happened, or there was a cause for this universe, to God had to be the one to do it, or that maybe not necessarily God, but this agent, like this agent of creation, this intelligent being had to be the one to do it. And so they make this logical leap. The problem with logical leaps is that you just can't do them unless you have some kind of support. Like you have to have some kind of evidence pointing from the cause of the universe to an intelligent being. And they just never seem to be able to do that.
Discoveries in observational astronomy and developments in theoretical physics have revealed that the universe had a beginning. This is contrary to the expectation of scientific materialists who long portrayed the universe as eternal and self-existent, and therefore in no need of an external creator.
Well, yeah, because prior to the discovery of the Big Bang, or the cosmic microwave background radiation that was discovered that led to the discovery of the Big Bang, we had no reason to think that the universe began. Like since matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it seems like there's some kind of eternal layer to our reality in whatever fashion. And so we found out that our universe started, 14 billion years ago, 13.8. It's a good thing that we were wrong. We are wrong about most things in this reality. And so to actually figure out that we were wrong and correct ourselves is a good thing. But for some reason, they always think that every time that science is wrong and corrects itself, that's apparently a negative thing for science. When in fact, science is specifically designed to do that. So this is not anything special. We've been wrong about plenty of things in the past. He wants to point out how, well, the Bible says that the universe started, or began to exist. And so therefore, well, I think he's going to get that here. I'm going to let him get to that point and then I'll explain some shit.
This evidence for a beginning has instead confirmed the expectation of theists. Nobel laureate Arno Penzias helped make a key discovery establishing a cosmic beginning. He later observed, "The best data we have are exactly what I would have predicted had I nothing to go on but the first 5 books of Moses and the Bible as a whole."
Interesting enough, Arno Penzias was a Jew, but I mean, he always had conflicts with religion personally, from what I remember researching today. But the fact is that he was very religiously minded. So it's no surprising that he would connect the beginning of the universe to the Bible or anything like that. So I expect somebody like Arno Penzias to connect the beginning of the universe to the Bible. I just want to pick out exactly what he says here. The best data we have are exactly what we would have predicted if I had nothing to go on but the first 5 books of Moses. Now, he said this in 1978. So for one thing, we've come a long way since the late 70s. We've discovered a lot more about our reality. And so this is really outdated information. If you wanted to disregard whatever in the fuck Arno Penzias says in this particular speech bubble, all you really need is the fact that he said it in 1978. It's not a recent quote as to what he thinks about it now. So this is just another case of quote mining and cherry picking in order to support his case. Also, I don't care what any one particular scientist says about the beginning of the universe or how it relates to the Bible. I just really don't. It makes no difference to me if fucking Stephen Hawking had come out, been like, God exists and that's all you need to know. Go fuck off and fuck yourself. I'm going to go over here and do whatever the fuck I want. It doesn't matter to me what anybody says personally about what they think about whether or not God exists. I care about what the evidence shows us. I want to get into like him saying that if I had nothing to go on but the first 5 books of Moses. Now, if you don't know, the first 5 books of Moses are totally fucking ridiculous. Archaeology has not vetted any particular portion of the Genesis account or any of the other 5 books of Moses, especially not Judges or any of that. There's a lot of things that are ridiculous in the Bible. The ridiculousness can really be summed up in Genesis 1. Here's what we know about the beginning of the universe, okay? Our most likely hypothesis involves quantum scalar fields and them fluctuating in order to produce a massive amount of energy that inflated the universe, right? Near instantaneously, and then it continued to inflate after that. We know for sure that the universe inflated. At some point in the past, 13.8 billion years ago, the universe near instantaneously inflated. That's what we know. And then what we know is that for 300,000 years after that, not even atoms could form, okay? Light could not travel through the universe because it was so hot and dense. So just keep that in mind. No light, no atoms whatsoever, okay? It wasn't until after that point that atoms were able to form, and then eventually stars were able to form and all this other shit, and then planets were able to form. Now listen to Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day and the darkness night. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. All right, so that's Genesis 1 through 4. Not only does he have day being used before the sun comes into the equation, but he also has light being magically created. Not only that, but the beginning of the universe, as far as the Bible goes, was just like a whole shit ton of fucking water, okay? And God apparently was hovering his ass over the vast expanse of reality that was just water. It was all water. He goes on to say in verse 6, and God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and then separated water from under the vault from water above it. And so God called the vault sky, and there was an evening and there was a morning of the second day. So on the second day, he separates the waters. And so we have all of reality, all the entire universe below it completely filled with water, and above it was just another thing of water. Like, it really perplexes me to hear somebody as smart as Arno Penzias say, "Oh, everything we have points to the first 5 books of Moses." And then you read the very first lines of one of the books of Moses, and it's like, what? It just doesn't make sense. I felt the need to put that into perspective, okay? It makes no sense to say that the beginning of the universe has any kind of connection to the books of Moses. I mean, for God's sakes, in the first 5 books of Moses, he explains the different patterns on animals by having them fuck in front of different, like, carved trees. And that's how that's how animals got their stripes and spots and shit. He just carved stripes into one tree and spots into another, and then had the animals fuck in front of them. So it's just really ridiculous.
And he's not alone. Cosmological evidence has led other prominent scientists, including former MIT physicist Gerald Schroeder.
Jew. Sorry, I don't mean that to sound negative. I'm just saying he's Jewish. So, I mean, I've actually responded to one of his videos on here, but he's very much religious.
And the great Caltech astronomer Alan Sandage,
again, religious. He's Christian, I believe.
To affirm a transcendent creator beyond space and time as the best explanation for the origin of our finite universe.
A lot of people don't understand about the argument from authority, and basically that is what Stephen Meyer is trying to pull here. There's 2 types of arguments from authority. There's an argument from false authority, and there's an argument from just authority. That's the argument from authority. It's just when you use the authorities to say, "Oh, look, this is true because the authorities say it's true." That's logically fallacious. And then, of course, the false authority is like, "Oh, hey, look, Oprah says that this right here will cure your back pain." And it's like, oh, well, Oprah's not a medical doctor. She's not a back doctor. I don't know what you call a back doctor. It's like, oh, Oprah doesn't have any expertise in that field. So there's no reason why we should think that she is correct about this. I never try to purport myself as an authority in anything or an expert. The only thing I am a quote unquote expert in is computer and software engineering. You want me to tell you how dumb as fuck your website is? Just call me up and I'll tell you about it. But other than that, I can't really help you. It's like, Dr. Josh says that is out of my area of expertise. I feel like he's trying to pull an argument from authority where he's using these people who are like astronomers and people that are authorities in their field. But he's trying to say, oh, hey, these smart people over here affirm what Arno says. And Arno says that, hey, the beginning of the universe is exactly what we'd expect if we just read the Bible. The problem is that when you actually think about how our universe began and all of the factors surrounding Earth forming in general, it is definitely not contained in the first 5 books of Moses. We can reject that because Dr. Oz exists. Yeah, so Casey says that Dr. Oz is a direct refutation of, authorities in the field being able to just be trusted at face value without any kind of further not investigation, but without any further consideration about what they're saying. And during the pandemic, people have really played off of this idea of, oh, well, this person's a nurse, so they wouldn't lie about ivermectin. I need to go out and get me some horse paste. And the reason why I say horse paste is because obviously doctors are not going to be prescribing ivermectin for any kind of COVID symptom or any kind of symptom other than a fucking parasite.
Second, fine-tuning. We live in what Australian physicist Luke Barnes calls an extremely fortunate universe.
Right. I've seen Luke Barnes come up a few times before, huh? Casey made a good point. He says that we live in a fortunate universe, but fuck it if he doesn't come from Australia, where everything in Australia tries to kill you. But we live in a fortunate universe. So by fortunate universe, what he's talking about is the fact that the universe supports life. And this whole argument from fine-tuning is really short-sighted and myopic. But we've been able to run simulations on these constants that they claim are fine-tuned. And we have found that there's a lot of variability that can occur in those constants. And we could still get a universe that forms galaxies and planets and all that other kind of stuff. In fact, one particular study that I have linked down there, which I will say thank you to Vice Rhino for finding it, but they actually ran simulations on the cosmological constant specifically. If you don't know, the cosmological constant is slightly positive, but if it was slightly negative, it would actually maximize like the formation of galaxies and planets and stars. So the fortunate universe is actually not this universe. It's kind of crazy to think that, oh, we live in a fortunate universe. No, we don't. There's been a few solutions to the whole fine-tuning proposed. For one thing, luck of the draw. Our universe popped into existence, and these are the constants that it had, and it permits life. Another universe could pop up with different constants in a different configuration, and it could also support life. We don't know the intricacies of our reality in that way. There are just so many things that we don't know. To claim that our universe is the only universe that can exist is to suggest that we have perfect knowledge about our reality. And I'm not so full of myself that I'm going to sit there and say that, nor should anybody out there be. But also you have people like Stephen Hawking and some other people proposing that our universe began with all of these constants being in sort of a superposition where they hold every single value that they could possibly hold. And then it's just so happened that the values that support life are the ones that we are now in. I mean, superposition is a thing that we've been able to experiment on and everything like that. So that's perfectly possible. And there's nothing that refutes that particular hypothesis. There's also the hypothesis of multiple universes existing, or, bubble universes or whatever. I think that also is very possible. I don't think that there's anything that suggests that multiple universes can't exist. If the beginning of the universe is natural, which everything that we have, all the evidence that we have suggests that it was a natural beginning to this universe, then another universe could just as easily pop up somewhere else. I don't know what that would look like, what that would mean, or anything like that. It's a far more plausible thing than a supernatural deity creating everything. So that's what I think about the fine-tuning arguments, but let's see what this vampire has as far as evidence goes.
Where fundamental laws and physical parameters have somehow been fine-tuned with just the right strengths and values to make life possible. The incredible odds against this happening by chance has led even agnostic and atheistic physicists to marvel.
Who? Cite who? Tell me, who are these agnostic and what I'm looking for out of Meyer here is a list of atheist and agnostic physicists that do this. Apologists always like to say that, you know, many people have been marveled by this, and they never give a list. So I'm eager to see if he has a list. If he does, great. I think that this should be the gold standard for anybody that says a statement like this. So if he does, great. Another thing, I don't give a fuck. I just don't. I don't give a fuck if anybody in particular is marveled at how complex reality is. I really don't care. What I care about is the evidence and whether that evidence supports the idea that a deity exists or some intelligent supernatural being, some being that exists outside of our universe and also within our universe or something like that. Like, I just care about the evidence. I don't care what anybody else thinks about it.
As British physicist Paul Davies has exclaimed, the impression of design is overwhelming.
All right, not to shit on Paul Davies too much, but Davies is kind of somewhat similar to a deistic type of person. He doesn't hold to any kind of traditional religious beliefs, but he's definitely not like atheist or agnostic. He definitely thinks that there is something going on behind the scenes of reality. I mean, I guess you could say that he's agnostic, but he definitely holds to some kind of supernatural view of reality. But also, just to reiterate, don't give a fuck what Paul Davies thinks or anybody in particular thinks. Of course, the world is gonna seem designed because our brains are pattern seeking. It was a survival instinct that developed over time that allowed us to survive. So yeah, we were able to cultivate that particular thing, but that has also fucked us up in the modern era because, you know, we have people that is like, oh, hey, look, this looks designed, so therefore it must have been designed by somebody. It's like, come on, Phil, that's a fucking plant. You bury a seed and then it grows. And we have the natural processes and the natural explanations behind it to explain all of that, Phil. What the fuck? God damn it, Phil. Go fuck yourself. Sorry for anybody named Phil in the chat. I'm not talking about you.
Atheist physicist George Greenstein expresses similar cognitive dissonance. The thought insistently arises that some supernatural agency must be involved.
Well, yeah, but this doesn't sound like he's saying, oh, there is some kind of supernatural agency. I mean, I get that Meyer is saying that, oh, it even has these atheist and agnostic people like stumped or something like that. So I get that that's what he's saying. He's not saying that they think that there exists some intelligent design to the universe. But I mean, I feel like most people thinking, oh, you know, somebody had to do that. Like it's incredibly hard to get over that hurdle for some people because, you know, it's been drilled into us for the longest time that God created everything. God is necessary for everything to exist. I get the need or this inclination that things look designed or that there was some kind of force behind things that happen. All the evidence that we have points to things just naturally happening. So that means that God is not part of that equation. So until you can actually get past that hurdle, then just because it seems designed doesn't mean that it is designed.
Third, the complexity of life. Molecular biology has revealed the presence in living cells of an exquisite world of informational nanotechnology, digital code in DNA and RNA, tiny, intricately constructed molecular machines, a complex information storage, transmission, and processing system that resembles but vastly exceeds our most advanced digital high technology.
Digital high, like that is some masterful bullshit that he has right there. It resembles but vastly exceeds our most advanced digital high technology. I've never heard of high technology other than, you know, people smoking a blunt I don't really understand why they think the argument of shit's complex, therefore God did it, is like a convincing argument, which is effectively what all of this resolves to, is just, oh, look, shit's complex, therefore God had to create it. It's like, yeah, I don't know exactly how a plant can be produced from a seed or how a plant grows from a seed. Sure, I can't explain that. But we do have plenty of people that know all of the processes that go into plants growing from a seed. We can explain how plants chemically change from a seed into a full-ass plant or a tree or anything. Like, we understand, like, through years and years of research, we've been able to understand it. Just because shit's complex does not mean that it's somehow created by God, or that it somehow gives a problem, or that somehow it is a problem for atheists or a natural worldview. Like, it's not. Like, this is perfectly explainable on a natural worldview. What Stephen Meyer is essentially saying here is that, well, you know, this shit's pretty complicated, so I guess, God did it, and that's where he leaves it. I just don't understand why people think this is a convincing argument. There's plenty of things that confuse and confound me on a daily basis that I don't understand. I don't think, oh, well, a God must have done that, or to marvel at the complexity of life. Like, I don't think that it requires an intelligent deity behind everything in order to marvel at those things.
Not what anyone would expect to see as the result of blind, materialistic processes. Dawkins himself may have conceded as much when he recently confessed to being knocked sideways with wonder at the miniaturized intricacy of the data processing machinery in the living cell.
You know, I really wish people would. It really grates on me every time they mention fucking Dawkins. You could be knocked sideways with wonder at the complexity of life and the complexity of the living cell. You can marvel at it, but ultimately it's all about chemical processes. Cells operate on chemical processes. Like, that's the reason why cells form, chemical processes. Why do mitochondria produce proteins? Chemical processes. It's a chemical process that produces the mRNA, and it's a chemical process that reads the mRNA and produces the protein chains, you know, using the amino acids. And so, I mean, you can marvel at the intricacy of these biological machines. That doesn't mean that a God exists or anything like that. That doesn't mean it presents a problem for atheists, not even dipshits like Dawkins.
So what should we make of all this?
That you're a vampire and a dipshit?
For their part, scientific atheists have constructed ever more convoluted and fanciful theories.
When he says constructed, convoluted, and fanciful theories, he just means shit's complex and I don't understand it, so therefore it's all convoluted. It's too fancy as shit for me to understand, so, you know, I'm just gonna take a shit on it right here. I'm gonna shit on it in the hallway, is what Stephen Meyer says about it. But I like how fanciful. He says, like, I can't think of anything more fanciful than a wizard like creating the universe out of a bunch of water. I mean, that's pretty fancy if you think about it. If you think about the Bible, God's pretty fancy. I don't know if y'all recall, but on our Daily Bible podcast, we read the part where God specifically tells the Jews how fancy he wants the Ark of the Covenant to be, and how fancy his house of worship should be. I can't think of anything more fancy than some of the shit that's in the Bible.
They posit alien designers to account for the code of life, multiple parallel universes to try to explain fine-tuning.
Okay, so the first one that he's mentioning is panspermia, the idea, and it's not necessarily that aliens planet is here or anything like that, but that, like, you know, the first cells of the first living organisms were deposited here through either a meteorite strike or something like that. Of course, aliens are a possibility, although I don't like, I think that's probably one of the least plausible explanations, but that's what he's talking about is panspermia. It's a real scientific theory or scientific hypothesis about how life formed here. But, he's also being very misleading in this because he's acting like that's the only way that's the only hypothesis we have about the beginning of life, right? Or how life formed or abiogenesis. We have several hypotheses about it. Like we got the mRNA world hypothesis, and we've got a plethora of other hypotheses about how life could have first started, because we'll never exactly know unless we reproduce it in the lab. But as far as the mRNA kind of world or this very chemical-based universe or world kind of goes, we've been able to do a little bit of that in the lab with the Miller-Urey experiment. They've been able to, that experiment produced the very basic building blocks of life with natural processes, natural shit, parallel universe to explain fine-tuning. That was one possible hypothesis. And then there are plenty of other hypotheses that also have been stated, like the superposition before our universe popped into existence idea. That is still a hypothesis. The thing is that we're never going to know for sure. Just one hypothesis is going to be more likely than another. But we don't need an intelligent designer or an intelligent being in order to explain like these constants that seem to be fine-tuned.
And they've developed elaborate mathematical equations in an attempt to use physics to show how the universe could have begun from nothing physical.
Physics is complicated, and they got all these fancy fucking... hold on, let me go back a couple frames. You see, they got all these fancy fucking calculations here. Are you guys taking notes? They got all these fancy fucking calculations over here in order to explain shit that happens in reality. So, I mean, basically, this shit's complex. Therefore... like, this is all fanciful shit. I feel like Stephen Meyer is just like, oh, this shit's complicated. And so they have to come up with all these complicated mathematics and everything to explain reality when you could just go, God did it, and be done with it. Good point there, hun. This perfectly sums up Stephen Meyer's argument here. Math is hard, therefore God. Almost a doctor saying that this is not how a scientist thinks made me think about what he's just saying here. And yeah, that's like, scientists don't just create equations and explanations in order to somehow refute the idea that God did it or anything like that. Scientists should be concerned about just describing reality or figuring out the properties of reality. And because, I mean, that's the point of science, is to be able to, as accurate as we can, describe how reality actually operates. That's the goal of science. And to frame it in any other kind of way is just disingenuous, because I can guarantee you Stephen Meyer knows that's not how science works. He just wants to paint people that don't link like the natural world to God as being some kind of firm link. Like, he just wants to paint those people as having some kind of agenda against God. All scientists have as an agenda is to describe reality.
But what if the scientific atheists are just wrong? What if the universe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is an intelligent and purposeful creator behind it all?
First part that I want to tackle is, what if we're wrong? I mean, I know that we are on a lot of things. Like, the chances that we're wrong are higher than the chances that we are right on a lot of things. I'm not saying everything, because there are definitely some things that we can fully describe, like, how rain works and shit like that. But we probably are wrong on a lot of things. And that's fine. Science is meant to, give us the best description of reality until we get new evidence, new information, and then we correct ourselves and we have a better understanding of our reality. We have a better understanding of how reality works. Now, his second part here about what if this world is exactly how it should be if there's an intelligent, purposeful creator behind it all? Well, if you could just make up whatever property you want to, if you could just make up whatever in the fuck you think your God would make this world in, just right on the spot, ad hoc, no support whatsoever, then yeah, any description that you come up with is going to match what your creator wants because you're just making shit up. And that's what I feel like Stephen Meyer's doing here, is he's talking about how, hey, if we just make up our own requirements and then say, boom, God would want those requirements, then we've proven God. Yeah, pound it. Thank you, hon.
In my book, Return of the God Hypothesis, I argue that the universe has precisely such properties, and that raises a hopeful possibility that we are not the product of blind, pitiless indifference, but instead that we were made on purpose, that we were intended.
Really? I feel like this doesn't play out very well for you in various ways. Like, how about children with bone cancer? What about children that are born addicted to meth? If we're born and created as intended by God, God has a sixth sense of humor on occasion, doesn't he? What about all the animals born in the wildlife that are like fucked up with various genetic diseases that causes, horrific and detrimental effects? Well, what about all of these natural evils that exist out there? Of course, I don't know if Stephen Meyer leans this direction, but I've heard apologists say, well, that's just because man sinned. Oh, okay. So let me get this straight. If I can, let me describe it for you. Timmy down the street is 5 years old and he finds out that he's got a very aggressive form of cancer. And the reason why Timmy got cancer like that is because some old bitch back thousands of years ago ate an apple when she didn't know it was wrong to eat the apple. She didn't know it was wrong to disobey God, but she ate the apple. So that means Timmy's got to die. Apples are delicious. I mean, technically it's just some kind of fruit, just random ass fruit. Yeah. But you understand what I'm saying here. That just doesn't connect at all. Some woman ate a fruit and therefore Timmy gets cancer? Like, I don't understand that. Now, I don't know if that's how Stephen Meyer argues it. That's how some apologists argue it. Some people also cite free will. Like, we give people free will. It's like, oh, well, what in the fuck did Timmy choose in order to get cancer? Oh, well, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was the parents. Oh, so what choice on the fucking planet could a parent make that would result in their child getting cancer like that? I mean, true, there are some decisions that the parent could make, but I'm talking about like decisions that only affect them. Because that's what we're talking about here. I mean, it's just like, it just resolves into a very uncomfortable situation when you're talking about how we are intended by God. Like, this world is created for us by God, and we were created for a purpose, which is essentially just sucking that God dick.
British historian Paul Johnson has argued that the existence or non-existence of God is the most important question we humans can ever ask.
I mean, that's a very subjective statement. For that guy right there, yeah, I mean, he feels that it's the most important question. Some other people have better shit to do with their lives. I think that it's a very subjective statement. I mean, I think that it's an important question to ask. Saying that it's the most important question, I think, is reaching a little bit.
Given the scientific evidence we now have, it might be time to consider or reconsider this question.
I mean, I think that we're always like considering and reconsidering this question. I don't think that anybody stopped considering it. I guess I'm a little confused as to what Stephen Meyer is trying to say here. Also, I feel like he's like looking at me like he's about to feed on my neck or something. Like he's just eyeing my jugular right now because he hasn't had a decent meal in like a fortnight or something.
I'm Stephen Meyer, philosopher of science at the Discovery Institute for Prager University.
All right, thank you. Why don't you go back to your coffin? Bye, stupid ass. All in all, for Stephen Meyer's video here on his video for PragerU, I did not find the three problems to really be problems. The first problem was the Big Bang. That's not a problem for us. We can explain that naturally. As far as atheism goes, which technically, and I didn't even specify this in the video, but technically that has nothing to do with atheism. Atheism is just whether or not you believe in a God. And, as far as atheism goes, you don't. You don't believe in a God. It says nothing else about reality or this world. Just whether or not you believe in a God. So really, none of these things pose a problem for atheism. But as far as the Big Bang posing a problem for a naturalistic view of reality, and I guess a materialistic view of reality, it doesn't really pose a problem at all, because we've been able to understand the Big Bang within a view of naturalism. And then the second one was fine-tuning of the universe. And we've also been able to perfectly understand that, or not perfectly understand, but we've been able to hypothesize and simulate and interact with these different values for the constants, and we've been able to show that they're not all that fine-tuned. There's just a certain set of values for which life could arise in a universe, and we just so happen to live in a universe that exemplifies one of those configurations. And so we've been able to understand that one on a naturalistic view of reality. And then the final one is just how complex molecular biology is. And that's pretty much it. It's like, oh, look, molecular biology is so fucking complex. God must have done it, is essentially what his argument was. And that's not at all that convincing, like, whatsoever. So I don't understand why he thinks that should be convincing to anybody. Shit's complex. So the fuck what? Shit's always been complex. Anyways, none of them were all that impressive. None of them were all that surprising. More importantly, none of them really posed a problem for us. So it kind of seems like he's failed in his video here. Like I said before, if you're leaving out right now, please leave a comment, smash the like button. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. I appreciate all you people, all you heathens out there. Make sure you stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.